Yeah. I lay on the scale, you gotta glow. You gotta glow. She had my attention, she gotta know.
I would like to welcome everyone to another episode of the Let's Get the Podcast. I'm your host Zeke, and in this episode I have Tia returning from their first episode to talk about anime and travel in more detail. You can follow her Instagram at No One Travels Like Gaston to learn more about travel facts and city histories. I'd like to give a content warning for any strong language used in this episode, and hope you have a nice day and enjoy the show. Origin story already, so now we can get more to your individual questions.
Okay.
So in the same episode, talk about anime and travel. So my first question is, how does it feel to live in different countries?
Living in different countries is actually really cool. I think I'm a big advocate for travel. So like for me, whenever people are like, oh, I don't have a passport or I don't like to travel, I'm like, no subs at you, sorry. and I just look at them and I'm like, what? That's like one of the first things that like I wanted to do the moment I turned 18. It really started when I went abroad to Denmark, and it was my first time going to a different country that wasn't like the DR. And if everything was just so new and everyone was just super nice, and it was great because like I felt like I was in an environment where I was really learning. And I think my favorite part about traveling is the stories I take with me. Like every place I've traveled to, I've gotten into something, and when I come back, I'm like, it makes for a great story. It's legal, don't worry.
Interpol, you got her.
Boys, FBI. Yeah, but like, so I really enjoy traveling for that reason. And also, when you're in another country where you don't know anybody, you don't know the language, you don't really know your way around, a lot of people are like, that's scary, but I'm like, no, this is great, because it really puts into perspective how little time you have, and you just really are so in the moment of like, I love this. What the fuck is that? What is this? Who are those? It's such a great thing because you're really genuinely curious. Whereas like when I'm back home, yeah, things are great, but I get so used to the routine that nothing excites me. So when I'm in a new country, it's just like, I want to do everything all at once.
So that, your name, each one of your names is a different culture, right?
Yeah, so my first name is Spanish, my middle name is Farsi, and my last name is French. Mm-hmm. Spanish because my mom's Dominican, and she had to pick the most confusing name ever, as Dominicans do. My middle name because my mom's professor, when she was in college, was really helpful to her, especially like not only in terms of academics, but in terms of like, well, my mom was pregnant with me when she was in college, so this professor really assisted my mom in like, you know, getting ready for the journey that is maternity, especially when you're basically a teenager. And like, she assisted my mom in so much that my mom told her like, oh, I'll let you name my child if it's a boy or a girl. Turned out to be a girl, I think. And
check again, right? Yes.
So my middle name is Shahzadi, which is Farsi for like beautiful princess or something. The characters are cool. I think I would want to get that as a tattoo as well. And my last name is Gaston. The Germanic like meaning of my name means stranger or someone that never belongs. The French connotation of it is like big cat. Big fluffy cat. But having my last name has always been fun because everyone busts out in song from like Beauty and the Beast. Or my first name is Te Amaré, and there's a lot of Spanish songs from the 80s that always start off with Te amaré toda la vida, and that's just like my introduction whenever I walk into a room.
So I can see the name pretty much was like almost like fate for you to start traveling, experience different cultures.
Oh yeah, nothing about me is standard. Yeah, but I like it like that. It keeps things interesting.
So what was your favorite place to travel?
My favorite place? Oh man, I think I would have to say my favorite place that I've been to has definitely been Hungary. Like, I spent the longest amount of time in Budapest. I spent a lot of time in Budapest, but I really spent it in a town 2 hours outside of Budapest called Kecskemét. And it's like a very tiny town. But I like Hungary because, well, prior to their prime minister, because he's a fucking racist. And yeah, I don't care if the international community knows that. It was a really great experience because Hungarian is not like traditional in any sense, because whenever we think about going on vacation, you think of like, ooh, Cancun, ooh, Puerto Plata, the Dominican Republic. But yeah, I shipped myself off to Budapest to teach English. When I got there, Hungarian is the second hardest language to learn in the world because they have 36 letters in their alphabet, and it has basically no like traditional roots. So there's no Slavic roots. There's no Latin or German roots. The only other language that's like similar to Hungarian is Finnish, and they're on different sides of the world, and no one knows why they're similar, but they are. But Hungarian is the second most hardest language to learn in the world. So when I got there, I know Spanish. I did not understand this. Like, I've been to the Czech Republic, where it's basically Romanian, like Slavic and Latin. I was able to read some things. But then I got to Budapest and I was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Yeah, but it really is one of those countries that has like, sadly, it faded into the background after World War II, especially because of like, you know, the Soviet occupation. But it's beautiful and it has such a like rich part of history. Like Budapest is right there on the Danube River. And that's the other thing. People say Budapest, it's Budapest. I learned that apparently S's are pronounced like sh. But it's on the Danube River, which has played such a like intensive role in history, if you like know about that. It's gorgeous. You know, paprika, which we think of paprika and you would think it came from like the Americas, but no, paprika is native to there. Plums come from that area too. They have this really interesting drink called palinka, that it's like fermented plum, and that stuff like slaps harder than vodka. It's a tiny bottle too, so you just need like 2 swigs and you're just like, whoa. And the food is great. I was joking around the whole time I was there. I was like, Hungarians are basically just the Dominicans of Eastern Europe, because everything has meat and rice, and I loved it. Yeah, but it was great, and everyone was just super nice. And I don't know, it's picturesque. It kind of looks like a Wes Anderson film, but without the like sexual allegations, and I loved it for that reason.
Nice. Any least favorite place to travel?
Man, I would have to say Spain. I had fun with the people I went, but when I was in Spain, it was just so fucking racist. Like, a dude was on a smoke break from like his freaking lunch break, and he walked up, okay, this is the dedication, he walked up a flight of stairs to where we were in a park, and he threw trash at our feet, and he's like, welcome to Spain. Like, he said piel de lodo, which is basically Spanish for like muddy skin. And like, I was the only one that spoke Spanish, so my friends that I was traveling with, they looked at us and they were like, what do you say? And I'm like, oh, he's just being racist. And everywhere we went, like, the men were like insinuate to our friends, and they would say like, oh, nos gustas las negras, which means like, oh, we like the blackies. And it was just so much of that it got tiring to a point. Like, wherever we went, first of all, and then there's the thing that also pisses me off about Spain. they would hear me speak Spanish, because I was the only one that spoke Spanish, and they were like, oh, you're Dominican? And it was like with such disgust. And I'm like, hey, one of us is here involuntarily. And I can tell you, it's not you. Yeah, they have like such an issue with people that come from like...
It's your fault. Give me the seat. I'll go back.
Yeah, I'm like, excuse me? I didn't ask to be here. We're a Spanish-speaking country because of you. Yeah, and like that shit just pissed me off so much. And beautiful culture, but and you know what? If I ever get kicked out of Spain, I'm sorry, but it's just kind of overrated. Like,
yeah, our rating in Spain is
yeah, Spaniards are just like, fuck this bitch. Yeah, no, like, I feel like, or maybe just Madrid, but it was pretty overrated. Like, you go, you know, I don't want to say you go to one European country, you've seen them all, but like in terms of like new world architecture and everything, I had seen it all before everywhere I had gone, and plus it was just so immensely racist. I was like, god damn. But I only got it from the old people. The like younger generation that I interacted with at like clubs and stuff, they were really chill. Like, they were fun to talk to. And also, they don't understand like how messed up Christopher Columbus is. They like love him over there, even though he's Italian. And we had to explain to them like, nah, we don't fuck with him. We don't. We changed the name of our date for that reason. And they were like, what? He discovered you guys. And it's like, discovered or permanently borrowed? Which one?
Like, I like this land. This is my land.
You made this? I made this now. Yeah. So, yeah, Spain. I'm gonna get kicked out of Spain again. It's fine. I don't plan on going back.
Interpol? Don't come after me.
Yep.
Just had a question. I lost a question. But like, studying different cultures and everything, you said how off camera we talk about how things are happening in real time. How like a whole new country just come out of nowhere.
Yes. So, because of my major, I'm studying international affairs, and what I plan to do with that, I don't know. But I do like anything involving traveling, politics to an extent, and the betterment and fulfillment of mankind. That's always been my thing. As much as I don't like people, I don't think that you should be mistreated because of what you practice or what you look like. So my major requires me to constantly keep up with politics. And that's not just politics. Like, we hear politics and we think of, two parties don't like each other. But the politics of other countries is actually really deep and interesting. So much stems back from the aftermath of World War II, even the aftermath of World War I, especially in Europe, where they still carry a lot of that. And I just remember I constantly have to, anytime a new issue arises in another country, I know for a fact, I'm like, ah, damn, I'm going to be quizzed about this in class. So I have to, and it's not enough to just read the New York Times. You got to read so many news outlets. And because in my undergrad, I was a journalism major, I know hey, I have to fact check. I have to find sources and things. But now in grad school, especially because politics is constantly happening in real time, I have to keep up with that. And it gets to a point where it gets kind of depressing to read about all the atrocities happening in the world. And here I am sitting in a classroom complaining that I got to write a paper. And I'm like, damn, I feel bad for two reasons now.
This paper sucks, but then it could get worse.
Yeah, it'd be like that. This paper sucks, but I'm not on the other side of the world. Yeah.
So I guess travel, studying cultures makes you rethink how your place in the world. How America would be more egotistical and more centralized. Everything's about us. But then when you study the world, you're more you can see that there are different things going on.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, especially because I'm a woman of color, it definitely is not twofold, but threefold, because I do have the privilege of being born in a developed country now, but even in a developed country, I still have the backlash of things that happened years ago that we're still now trying to break. And then I look at other countries where, in some other developed countries, when I was in Denmark, no one even looked twice at me. They were like, okay, cool, she's here. She's American. But then when I was in Paris, it was just oh, you're American? The fuck? And yeah, so it's so when I'm in the US, I'm Dominican American. I can't just be American. When I'm in another country, it's well, who do I want to be today? And when I was in Cuba, I was not American, I was Dominican. And they loved me.
This one.
Yeah, but when I was in the Czech Republic, I was American, and they were like, oh, our allies, cool. And so every other place I go, it's cool that I get to code switch between wherever I go, but it's also kind of unfair because in other countries I can code switch and I can be oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. But when you're in the US, it doesn't matter if you're racially ambiguous. They're just huh, you're brown, go away. It's ah, damn it. But yeah, it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because especially if I talk poorly about the United States or the internal problems that it has, it's well, if you don't like this country, then leave.
I'm give me a receipt. I'll go back to Africa. We rebuild over there.
Well, no, that's even the thing there, because in a lot of African countries and African states, their issue of colorism is still prominent, and a lot of these things stem from colonization, and it's such a deep-rooted issue. Even in Dominican culture, there's colorism, and that's something that I've been trying to break with my family for the longest. Because you look at my mom and you look at me, and we look nothing alike. It's my dad that's the darkest one, and that's something that like, I have to carry with me everywhere. I have to constantly tell my story of like, basically everywhere I go, I have to explain my existence and why I'm brown. Because when I'm in the US, it's like, why are you brown? Colonization. When I'm traveling in Europe, it's like, why are you brown? Colonization, but from one of your own.
Like one of you guys.
Yeah.
But sorry, good sir.
What's up, dude?
For me, I'm just like a Black American. Let's just say, I never really struggled with finding the culture. It was more like my friends have the Dominican culture, Puerto Rican culture, and American culture. It was like I'm in my country of origin, so I'm just like, this is all I have.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Like, within like the Dominican culture, there's this thing of like a lot of Dominicans don't want to claim that they're Black. And like, you look at me, I identify as Afro-Latina. So when I have to check off the little boxes, it's like, are you Hispanic or Latino? Yes. And then the next question is, which do you identify as? And I was like, didn't I just click Hispanic and Latino? But then they're like, no, you're either Black, white, or whatever. And it's crazy because like my cousin, who is extremely light skinned and like has green eyes and like blondish hair, he gets to click the white box and I click the Black box. But mind you, we come from the same family. So really, like, that's one of the things that I found interesting. And I never had an issue with identity growing up. It was more so like I knew who I was and I knew my culture, and because I was taught so much. But then it always came down to like, well, I know what I know and I'm happy with what I know. Why can't other people just be happy for me? And it's having to constantly explain yourself. And I found that that's one of the things, like when I travel, that's another thing that I thought would go away, but that doesn't. Basically, like, all of my roommates when I was in Budapest were from like other European countries and some from like Middle Eastern countries. And there was like one other American, and he was Indian American. And like we would just talk about the like racist situations that we were just caught ourselves in the United States. And everyone in the room was like, what?
What's going on over there, guys?
Is that allowed? Yeah. And like, I'm happy that in other countries, they're just like, why do you guys do that? But then you have to remember in other countries, it's like very like homogenous societies where they don't, it's now that things are starting to change.
As one who never traveled, I don't know.
And it's okay. I'll take you traveling with me. We'll start off somewhere small.
Nice.
We'll go to DR.
Wait, I'm gonna get trapped over there. But like, aren't you Dominican? I'm like, maybe.
I mean, you could pass for Dominican.
I get Dominican all the time.
Dominicans are all shapes and colors.
People ask me, do you speak Spanish? I'm like, no.
That was Spanish right there.
They're like, what?
Deport them. Oh, no.
When people ask me the race in Spanish, I'm just like, what made you ask me? And I'm like,
you just look like a tall Dominican. That's it.
And then my hair is not nappy like I was as a Black person. Technically, people will assume it's very combable. So then it's like, nice.
I mean, that's the thing. My hair is not combable, but people never pick Dominican on the first try. Like, at my job, because it's me and another girl who speaks Spanish, but the other girl looks white, and I obviously do not look white. And so when they come up to us, a lot of the Spanish speakers will look at me and look at her, and then they'll go right to her, and they're just like, you speak Spanish? And then sometimes my friend doesn't feel like speaking Spanish, so she's just like, no, but she does. And then they're shook. They're just like, she speaks Spanish?
They're like,
I'm like, bro. We came on the same boat. What are you talking about? Oh man, I should probably stop making these jokes. Next question.
Let's switch on to anime.
Okay, I could do that.
Things that we like, people like. What types of anime do you like?
I like horror anime. I like horror and shonen anime. I like shoujo sometimes, but like I feel like shoujo, it gets so annoying with the I'm the main character and I'm either super frustrated all the time or just really bad at school, and I contribute that to being a personality. Yeah. But then like with shonen anime, it's like, I don't know, there's always a plot to it. If I could find like a shoujo anime that wasn't overly like, my life revolves around this boy that I've had a 5-minute interaction with, I'd love it. And if anyone has any recommendations, please recommend.
For me, definitely shonen, because it has action.
Yeah.
And violence. That must be something wrong. But all like his violent shows.
You like, I think you would definitely like supernatural or like horror animes. Like the gory horror animes get like intense. Like Hellgirl Jigoku Shouju is one that when I watched it I was like, yo, I had to pause it for a second and like recollect myself because I was like, what the fuck? Another is like intense as fuck because you got high school kids dying left and right. Yeah. What was it? My Diary, Mirai Oniki. That shit had me shook. I was like, oh no. Yeah, especially anything with like tsundere type characters. Those freak me. Those are the ones that like they're super calm or like lovable, but they're like murderous and psychotic deep down.
Like monster.
Yeah. Yeah. What's next?
What is next? So do you watch subbed or dubbed anime?
Subbed. I took Japanese a lot in high school and now. So like my Japanese is good enough that I can watch it, and if I gotta turn around, I'll still understand what's going on. But like now, whenever I watch dubbed anime, it's usually because like I'm either watching it on the TV. But the cringiness gets so annoying because they try to add like the prefixes to names. So like they'll say like, I don't know, Shinomi-chan. And I'm like, that doesn't sound good in English. It just sounds weird as fuck. Yeah, and especially when like you have the overly cutesy characters that are like so animated. In Japanese, it sounds like, okay, the voice inflection wavers. But in English, it tends to be really annoying because the character's voice is like tends to be high pitched. And hearing that in English is just like, oh my god, what the fuck? Yeah, man.
Yeah, dub is all the way. Audience, you're wrong. You're wrong. Dub is all the way.
I'll break your recorder right now.
Now it's easier for me to hear it, and then I don't have to read, and then wake up and pay attention.
I like reading.
I don't like reading.
And catch it. Like that's how you catch the interesting stuff, and you learn a little bit too. You're just nodding your head. Okay.
I'm a visual learner, so like when I see words, it just. I'm also, I guess, I associate with school and like how much I hated like the reading time we had to do. So then just
I loved reading times. I didn't have to talk to anybody. So.
Yeah.
Oh, my stomach.
Oh, yeah. And then manga or anime? Which one?
I used to read a lot of manga, but I think now I just prefer anime because like for manga, I blew through so much money buying the comic books. I went through so much. And after a while, it just starts to get messy because I had everything stockpiled in my room. Yeah. Whereas, like, with anime, I'm like, okay, I'll watch it, and if I gotta wait, like, a year or two for the next one to come out, cool. I tend to just let animes pile up, and then I'll binge watch it.
And I remember the first episode, we talked about how in that episode, we counted Avatar and Blue Dots as anime.
Yes.
But then you go to, like, people who call themselves purists, and it was like, if it's not made in Japan, then it's not anime.
See, I understand where the purists come from, and while I don't agree with it, because I think that's one of the great things about like animation is that it has come so far and expanded through so many like cultures and as a medium of art that saying that just because it was made in a certain country doesn't constitute as something else. I've heard people say like, oh, that's cultural appropriation. I'm like, I don't know how you can appropriate something like that, but I mean, I guess I can understand why they would say it. But I think like the Boondocks and Avatar: The Last Airbender or like Legend of Korra, I think those count as anime. They're just American anime. But the medium is still the same. The storytelling format is still the same. The over-exaggerated like expressions and like chibi forms are still the same. Like those, I say that those are anime. Especially the Boondocks.
It had like a whole Naruto fight scene in there.
Oh yeah, the fight scenes are awesome in the Boondocks. I love them. And it's politically charged. Amazing.
Cold.
Amazing.
And then, because like, if you show somebody who doesn't like watch anime and you show them like Avatar, they show them like My Hero Academia, they probably won't really tell the difference. They probably like, this is all the same.
I mean, if you have them both in English, then they'll probably be like, okay, these are the same.
Yeah.
But since Avatar: The Last Airbender was made in English, and then you show them My Hero Academia, I think for a lot of people, it's like once they hear something is in like a different language, they're like, that's different. I don't want it. But then there are the people who are like, that's different. I'm gonna try it.
And how do you feel about when anime was like early 2000s when like 4Kids were heavily edited?
Okay, so funny story. I actually had this discussion like 2 weeks ago with a friend of mine because one of the like executive PR people for 4Kids works right across the hall from my friend. And it was crazy because he came up to my friend like one time in like the break room and he was like, "Hey, you're young. Did you watch like a channel called 4Kids?" And my friend was like, "Yeah." And he was just like, like that was my team that worked on that and everything. And he was like, "Oh, wow." And when my friend told me, he was like, "Yeah, I didn't know that he worked for 4Kids and he was like really big in getting the like rights to the shows to come here to the US." And I looked at my friend and I was like, "Hey, ask him what the hell happened to One Piece. Why did they do that?"
Why did it take One Piece in general?
Yeah. And so apparently it was explained that like it was just so popular that they were like, "Oh yeah, this is fun, we'll take it." And then when they already bought the rights and they started watching, they were like, "Oh, we gotta edit this." And they left it like they got rid of so many episodes. So yeah, things like One Piece or like
the Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh, things like that. I'm like, if you're gonna have a platform to show anime to an American audience, you're gonna edit things, at least edit them right. Or like don't ad lib or do your research ahead of time and know whether it's even worth getting it, because if you're gonna be spending more money on editing, then what's the point? Especially like when you omit episodes.
Like as a kid, that's definitely how I got to anime, because watching it was like, this is just a cartoon, and then everything that's showed in America was made in America. Mm-hmm. But then you start going older, you start realizing some are French, some are Canadian, those are anime. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I think for me, how I got into anime was like my mom would just let me watch TV all night, and I remember like I would watch Adult Swim and they would show things like Inuyasha, Yu Yu Hakusho,
Prince of Tennis. I love that shit.
Yeah, Prince of Tennis. I remember that. Yeah, what other show? There were several shows.
Zatch Bell was lit.
Yeah, Zatch Bell, but that was on Toonami. Talking about like Adult Swim.
Oh. Like
Adult Swim had several shows and like that were anime that I was like, huh, what is this particular thing? And it was just when like the internet started becoming a major thing in households. So I remember just looking up like anime, and I would find like those like torrent websites where I could watch them. And like I started learning like, oh, this is called anime. And when I remember the first time I heard it in Japanese, I was like, the fuck is this?
Like, huh?
And then I started reading more on it. That's the other thing. Like once I get obsessed with something, I research the hell out of it. Yeah, and so I started just researching on anime, and then like that's how I learned about it. I was like, oh wow, that's cool. Like, and that's how I got into it. I don't watch anime as often as I used to, because like I just don't really have time. And then by the time I get home, I'm like, I want to just go to sleep. Yeah. Yeah,
my mom called anime just to control people. I'm just like, yeah. Whatever.
Yeah. I've tried to get my mom to watch anime with me, and she can't stand the voices, so she's like, I'm not gonna watch it. I'm like, okay, you do that. You do that.
Each their own.
Yeah.
And then earlier, so I talked about like spooky anime.
Yes.
And then you like spooky stories. All know that. So why?
So my interest in the occult really started with my family. Just growing up, it was always like a supernatural presence in my lifetime, because there was always like stories being told, especially in the Dominican Republic where we're from. So we live at like the base of a mountain, and it's a tiny town. So when the lights used to go out, because like the generator for the whole town would just stop, and so when the lights would go out, one of the pastimes that we would do is like everyone would take a candle and just come to whoever's porch, like everyone took turns with like who was gonna host the night parties. That's what we used to call them. And we would just sit in the front porch on like a hot night. Well, it's DR, so it's hot every night. And like a hot night, just eating fruit and like, drinking juice, and we would just tell stories. And one of the things that they would tell me were like a lot of Dominican legends. So like Ciguapas were something that I learned a lot about. I learned Ciguapas are they're like creatures that they look like people except their feet are backwards and they come out of the sea. So when they come out of the ocean at night, it looks like they walked into it. And when they walk into the ocean, like before the sun comes up, it looks like they walked out. So it would leave a lot of people confused as like, where are these tracks coming from? Because they don't want people following them. So Siguapas, every animal that's like native to DR has like a legend associated with it. There were a lot of like native legends associated with it. So it was always this, this theme of like mysticism and the occult. And we always had we had a curandera that lived near us. So curandera is like, it's the equivalent of like witch doctor, but it really just means like curist. And she taught me a lot like growing up. And then like we would play with tarot cards and we would tell like stories of possessions. I actually saw an exorcism growing up. Yeah. And I don't know, there was always just something. And like, especially where I'm from, because it's like, I basically live in the bush. It was like this just densely just wooded area. There were trees, there's like leaves, flowers everywhere. That's why I like herbal medicines a lot. Don't get me wrong, I fuck with science. Vaccinate your kids. But I learned how to make a lot of like natural candies. A lot of it, I love tea. Like I love tea so much because I learned how to make tea from scratch, and I learned how to do so many things, just because like everything was right there. And at least in my town, it's moved away from the practice a lot, but that worship of nature. And I sort of learned like everything that you take from the earth, you give back to it, and you got to appreciate it. And that's why I like scary things. So scary, but yeah, that's why I like the occult, because there's so much that we don't know that like I really appreciate it. And like it was such an integral part of me growing up that like everything from how the stars move to stories that like the native Tainos would associate with the stars and the moon and the ocean, like that was all cool. And then like you compare that to a lot of the like pagan stories from other countries, and that's the other thing that I learned when I went to other countries. It was like before Christianity took over, what it was there, and you learn about that, and it was like, wow, we basically almost all had sort of the same culture, except like just different aspects and like just different things. But yeah, it's just cool, man. And then the whole point is that like no one knows if ghosts exist. That's what everyone claims. Or like if there's life after death, or like if there's anything after death. I've never been afraid of that. Like even my tattoo is associated with death. My tattoo is Memento Mori, means like remember you're gonna die. And so I've always been attracted to bones and what's out there. Fuck with me and aliens. I love aliens. Sorry, Najrat.
This is part.
Yeah. Especially like stars. Stars are really chill. I have a close relationship with the moon. But I really dig, like, it was just always there, and I really digged it, and I really appreciate the fact that my family never, like, shied away from it. They're always just, like, if I asked a question, I was like, hey, what's a poltergeist? Or, like, hey, what's this? They'll sit us down. And the thing about, like, at least in Hispanic culture is that storytelling aspect is like such a big part of our culture. Like that's how you get the family together. And like, I don't know, I just associate the stories with like, my roots and where I come from. And that's why I'm like, it's so important to me. Would I teach my kids later on in the future anything? I think I would let them figure things out on their own, but that storytelling aspect, absolutely, I'll tell you a story. Hell yeah, I'll tell you a story right now.
Let's go, huh?
Yeah, and I love storytelling for that reason.
Storytelling. I only have storytelling in my family. Is more than like, if I ask a question, probably get an answer, probably won't get an answer. Depends on the topic.
I don't know. My family will sit you down for like 2 hours over a cup of tea, and they'll tell you a story. That's like what we really do. We just tell stories all day. And I think that's why I got into writing, because it was like it gave me a medium to create. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like I love writing, but I haven't been able to do it in like a long time, at least for fun.
So writing is your creative outlet? So
yeah, writing and photography now. Anyone who follows my Finsta knows that like I write long-winded passages about like whatever it is I'm feeling. But like creative writing, I really like. Especially because like I play Dungeons and Dragons a lot, so the notion of like world building, I love it. If I get to come up with a whole world with a whole new subspecies, with like, if I can just create something out of nothing, like I'm happy for the end of the day. So I love writing like stories, characters, but the thing is that I never like coming to an end, so I'll always leave everything on a cliffhanger and then just start a new story.
Like, what's the answer? There is no answer. I'll get back to you. No.
So what happens next? Nothing.
Nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's what I do for fun. Yeah, photography I really like. I got into photography recently. When I got into traveling, I started taking pictures because with a photo you can attach a story, you can attach the history. And there's a quote that says, if you want to know what someone cares about the most, look at what they take pictures of. And like all the photos I take are of my friends, my dog, or like of places I've been to, because I think I'm true to my name. My name means I'll always love you. And like I do love the time that I'm in, because you can have so many things. Like my grandma tells me stories about like how I only have very few pictures of my grandmother, like of her growing up. It's because pictures were so scarce. And like now, my grandma and I will like take so many photos all together, because it's something that's new and it's great to capture all of these moments while you're young. Quoting my grandma on that.
With me, I don't really like writing, but like we give me something to draw, or like I used to create like my I remember one time I created my own wrestling out of toy out of paper.
Wow.
And I had like a whole story around it. Then I used like a Capri Sun box to like a bus to put them in.
Oh.
So I used to be like super creative with that, but then try to go with math. So I was like, we had like two different skills. I had really good at math, which is like analytical, also really good at creative stuff. So it was like confused on where to go, what to do next.
You could probably be an architect.
Nah, that's mad. That's mad work. I seen that. I was like, oh no, we have to build buildings and then make sure they don't crumble.
No. I used to be able to draw. Like, I'm not good at drawing people, but like landscapes are fine. Or like, I don't like contemporary art. But
We sold a banana for $2 million.
someone ate it, you know that?
Yeah. But the person sold like 2 other bananas with tape to a wall too, and was like,
Yeah, but like old school art. Like when I went to Versailles in Paris, there's like these big portraits that it took hours to paint, and like the colors are vibrant, and like just the dedication to make this thing, because that material was so scarce, and someone was like, I'm gonna make this. Like the things like that I love. And like there's some art that I'm like, okay, cool. I don't understand it, but I'm gonna let you rock. Yeah, but for me, it's writing and photography. To an extent, video editing. Like, I like making music videos. I'm currently making one with a couple friends of ours, so watch out for that. And I like that stuff, but I think the part that I freaking hate is the editing aspect of it.
yeah, that's why I still haven't touched any of these videos.
Yeah, like, I have to really be, like, focused. I have to really be focused for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna sit and edit these, because it takes so long. If I can just make the concept and give it to someone else to edit, that we're fine.
Yeah, we'll become an animator, but then
It takes a lot of time.
times of creating your anime.
It takes a lot of time. Like a lot.
This reason thing so famous is like editing.
Yeah. That's why when you were like, oh, help me edit these, I was like, oh, okay, I'll help, I guess.
Nah, I probably got it.
I'll help. What's the next question?
What is the next question?
Gotta pee.
You want to take a break?
No. We'll rock through it.
Really rock on any block. And then with that, so it seems like everything you like connects with each other. How you like taking photographs, you like traveling, and then pictures 1,000 words. So you like writing,
Yeah.
and then you like culture and peoples, and then you like Dungeons and Dragons, which makes you talk to people, and then you make your own adventures with them.
Yeah, I'm a nerd. I'm not even a low-key nerd. I'm a straight-up nerd.
How is Dungeons and Dragons? It always like that one game, like cartoons or like shows where they use like
Mhm.
just like nerd.
The thing that, first of all, the reason that Dungeons and Dragons is associated with like nerdiness is because like in the 1980s, it was affiliated with people who were not socially like bloomers. And I guess that sort of just carried through. Also, you have to understand that like Hollywood in the 1980s perpetuated this image of like, compartmentalizing children, basically high school students, in different subgroups such as jocks, cheerleaders, nerds, goths. And the only reason they really did that was because I've done a bunch of cultural analysis on like subculture. Fucking movies. You can get me on movies too. My favorite movie of all time is All About Eve, 1953. Look it up. Like, that is my favorite movie. It is 3 hours long and I don't care. I will sit there and watch the shit out of it. But I digress. I like doing movie analysis because that sort of genre in the 80s that stemmed from like having so many subcultures within a high school. Like, if you think about it, they were always in like middle America, and I guess people who went to school in like New York City, that didn't apply. But it's all because of music. Like, the reason that they made these like cliques is because they were meant to represent the different subgenres of music and like subcultures that were coming out of the time. Especially like the goth movement, which was just like the sister to the punk movement from the 1970s, which is just the child of rock and roll from the 1960s and 50s, which is also just the child of jazz and like big band. So there's like this long timeline, but like the way you dress, the way you talk is associated with the things that you listen to. Hence why I think now that the decade's ending, the 2010s are going to be fucking great because there's going to be so many things. Billie Eilish did not create goth, just putting that out there. And these subcultures stem from that. So with the nerdy subculture in Dungeons and Dragons, I got back to my point. So with the nerdy subcultures with Dungeons and Dragons, it's that it was really affiliated with like men, because at the time it was never believed that like girls played Dungeons and Dragons. It was like these dudes that would rather stay and create and like play pretend. It was this stigma of like, oh, they're just doing this and created their own world because they're not socially attuned to what's going on in like the outside world. Now, Dungeons and Dragons is such like a widely played concept because people see that it is a creative outlet. I love Dungeons and Dragons because like, one, I love world building. I love the characters, but there's so many things you can do. Like, I remember I made a party once, and I had my bard, and I had my rogue, and I had my barbarian, and they went into a tavern, and like, you literally just asked them, okay, you're in the tavern, what do you want to do? And like, my rogue was like, I'm gonna go up to the bartender, ask him for a beer, and when he turns around, I'm gonna steal from him. I was like, why would you do that?
He's like, I'm broke.
No, really, it's more so, it was just the fact that, like, they could do it. And the bard was like, I see a sultry girl sitting over there, I'm gonna sleep with her. And it's just like, you can do whatever you want, but then me as the DM, I have to mark down what you've done because everything has a consequence in the game, and there are different mechanisms. It's like a video game. Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons is like a IRL video game that like I'm just creating as we go along because I create a story, but the characters don't necessarily have to follow the story. We just have to get back to the story eventually. But that's why I love Dungeons and Dragons. It's a media, like, I think it's really fun. And a lot of my friends who didn't grow up with like that as a form of entertainment, I've gotten friends to like join in, and they were like, wow, this is actually like cool, because once they see how much freedom they have in this made-up world, they were like, oh, there's actually a concept called like murder hobo, and it's I see you made a face, but let me explain. So murder hobo in Dungeons and Dragons is basically like, you have a character that like their initial reaction to any circumstance you propose is, I'm gonna kill it. And everything has a consequence. So if they roll the dice and they get a 20, it means like they killed it, and they killed it good. If they roll a 1, it's like they didn't kill it and the thing is trying to kill them now.
So it's like the negative tree in video games where you decide, I'm always going to do the bad thing. Yeah,
it's definitely the negative tree, because like, and that's where those placements come from, like lawful good, lawful all that. It comes from Dungeons. Yeah, it comes from Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, these murder hobo characters, just always decide, hey, we're in a tough situation, let's just kill them. And
Seems to work out.
yeah, but like the thing is that with murder hobos, you have to write it down because everything has a consequence. So like you killing that traveler on the side of the road, it's gonna come back and bite you in the ass because turns out that traveler was just the prince to this kingdom that you went to go do a job for in disguise, and now you're wanted for murder.
Just like,
yeah, and then but the thing is that if you're like when you play with a party, so your party, whatever you do affects your party. So if like you murder them, they're an accessory to murder too. At least that's how I make my games, because it's also fun. This is my sadistic part. When one character does something to fuck up, I make sure that the whole group gets fucked up so they can start infighting and start arguing with each other, because when they argue with each other, they're just like, why would you do that? You idiot. And then like the infighting is such a real concept, but what I find with my characters and like my players is that when they start getting these like frustrations out on the game, everyone leaves Dungeons and Dragons feeling so good because they got to yell at each other and they got to curse at each other and they got to like say just the wildest things. And it's a creative medium, but like a great emotional one because it's so cathartic to just be like, you fucking dumb bitch. I told you we were gonna cast a freaking chameleon spell. Why would you drink the potion? You know they're not really mad about that. They're mad about something that happened later on in the day, but they just really wanted to get that out there. And it's great. It's honestly great.
Definitely remind me of video games we playing like Call of Duty or like Siege, Rainbow Six Siege, and you had to like you start arguing with teammates like made a plan, but somebody was like, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah, no, it's definitely like that, but IRL. And it's hilarious because you get to see their face and you get to see everything happening real time, and you're just like, oh, I remember one time, like, when I used to play, now I DM, I was a rogue, and, like, my character really liked to steal. No matter where she was like, I'm gonna steal it. And so, like, one time, I stole a potion, and that potion was like the one that we needed, but then we came across like a dragon's den, and I was like, I'm gonna steal that egg. And I stole the egg, and like the dragon really just yeeted me, and then ended up locking up my like teammates in a dungeon somewhere, and they were just like, see, you pissed it off. But it's great because those are things that like I would never steal in real life, but in the game I'm like, I'm gonna be the baddest bitch that I can be.
So it's like a mixture of GTA and like Mass Effect, stuff like that. We have
oh yeah, or
GTA,
like
the open world of GTA, but like the choices of Mass Effect.
Yeah, or like Detroit, the video
Detroit,
game. Yeah, where like everything you do has a consequence, but you're free to roam around the world and do whatever. You should play Dungeons and Dragons with me sometime.
Bet.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything this winter break, so except for working.
I'll be working.
Yeah, but it'll be great. I have a whole story that I've been dying to try out. Yeah, join in. We just need someone's house to do it. And that's the Dungeons and Dragons etiquette is when you go to someone's house, you have to bring a snack. Everyone brings a snack because you're going to be there for a while. Yeah.
So what else should we do? We've been doing this for like 46 minutes.
Okay, it's up to you if you want to call it.
Alright.
It's up to you.
I am the host. I keep forgetting that sometimes.
Yeah, that's one of the things I do in Dungeons and Dragons. But they're like, can we do this? And I'm just like,
can you?
I'm like, wait, can you? Oh, I made the world. Yeah, go for it. I am God.
Or like The Sims.
I love Sims. You know there's a theme. Anything where I don't have to live my actual life, I love.
Let me try this out. Let me try that out.
I spend so much time just making my character and like their origin story that by the time I start playing, I'm like, okay, I'm bored. Click.
Yeah, I'm more into linear games where I could just like I have a beginning, then have an end.
I don't know, I like freeform games where I'm like, I don't gotta follow a storyline or a structure.
Nah, but then with that, there's so many choices and decisions. I was like, I'm really tired.
No, I dig that because I will do all the choices and decisions.
I'm just like, I had to make a decision. Nah, give me a game where I get to shoot or go to something. Boom.
Nah, I like games where there are so many things you can do, but like how you play determines the ending, or like determines the outcome.
Yeah, we'll call it an episode. How are things? So, thank you for coming to another episode.
No problem.
Yes, that was fun. Anyway, you want to plug anything?
Follow my travel account at No One Travels Like Gaston. I post facts about how to travel effectively and safely, and history facts about all the places that I've gone to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Episode done.
All right. Yay. Make sure you turn.
That brings another episode of the Let's Get a Podcast to a close. Again, you can follow Tia at her Instagram at No One Travels Like Gaston. For next week, I have my friend Isaac coming in to discuss the creative mindset of someone who creates film and writes poetry. I hope you continue to have a nice day, and hope to see you there.